Dog Works Radio is sponsored by Alaska Dog Works. Check out their website at alaskadogworks.com. You can support this podcast on patreon.com/firstpawmedia.
Hello and welcome to today's episode of Canadian Challenge Tales. We are joined today by Laura Neese from Michigan. How are you today, Laura?
I'm doing great.
Excellent. Well, thank you for joining the podcast. I know it's been a few years since you joined us at the Canadian Challenge. Back in 2015, you were part of the 12-dog race. You finished in third place, which is fantastic. Since then, you've been very busy. I believe a Yukon Quest run in 2016. 2017, you finished the Iditarod. 2018, you did the Yukon Quest again, finishing in third. And then in 2020, did the Iditarod. So you've really been around in addition to those races, lots of other races. I know the UP 200 you've been to regularly and lots of others around. So I'm really excited to get your feedback on races and how things have been. But I want to start, with where you started with mushing. I know you've been around mushing for quite a few years, even though you're still quite young. So can you tell us how you got started into mushing and, where this love for dog sledding started?
Yeah, so I grew up in central Ohio. Not a lot of snow down there generally. And sled dogs aren't too popular. So the whole love of the sport started when I was 9 years old. And my mom thought it was a good idea to follow the Iditarod online as a homeschool project. And little did she know that was going to be the rest of my life. I was sold right away, and from then on, sled dogs have been pretty much the top thing on my mind at all times. So it's been just a fun journey, and had a lot of great adventures out there, and yeah, it's been cool.
So is there a first memory that stands out for you, or a first race maybe that you think back on and go, that was the first time or the first, memorable experience?
My first qualifier was definitely a very memorable one, just because it was the Eagle Cap Extreme out in Oregon. And it was the first time things really started to feel real. So that was in 2015. I had been working with sled dogs for 5 years at that point, but that was my first race over 30 miles. And I remember crossing the finish line after that 200 miles and truly being sad that it was over. And it was kind of that moment that really let me know it was definitely a dream I wanted to continue to pursue.
Excellent. So you finished the Eagle Cap. I believe they have that in January.
Yeah.
And then February of 2015, you came to the Canadian Challenge. Do you have a fond memory from the challenge, or is there a trail portion you really enjoyed?
The challenge, honestly, is still one of my favorite races ever. Largely because of the community behind it. And just that race, I felt so welcomed, and just getting to know the people up there was great. And trail, I really loved the section between L'Orange and Grandmother's Bay. That for some reason I think about that run a lot, even now. It was a night run, and just Northern Lights. The team was cruising. Just one of those magical runs. And that still sticks with me.
Yeah, it's quite a trail section, particularly once you come off Lac L'Orange. It's, from lake to lake with portages.
Yes.
So you get a little bit of open lake, flat area, and then tight, twisty, little more technical portage. So it's become a popular spot. Was there a dog in that particular season that stands out to you, or that you really enjoyed, or maybe exceeded your expectations?
So that year, my main leader was Wilson. He was 3 years old at the time, and just a very, very hard driving leader. He's always wanting to go faster. Wasn't perfect on commands, but he sure loved to drive that team. Actually, that year, I think it was the third run of the race, I put Maple. Anybody who's followed me over the years knows about Maple. She's sleeping on my bed right now. She's my soulmate, super incredible leader. And that was the first race that I put her up in lead during a race with Wilson. And I actually think about that run a lot also. Just watching her do her thing like she'd been up front all the time. And so yeah, she went on. She's finished both of our Yukon quests. She ran over 500 miles in lead. And just a superstar. So that was kind of her debut.
Excellent. So did you get her as a puppy? Was it a dog you purchased or one that you bred through your kennel?
So I actually met Maple when she was 2 years old. So when I moved up here to the UP, I moved up here to work for Nature's Kennel. And so Ed Steelstra, he owns Nature's Kennel. He had just, I think it had been 5 months. He had bought Maple 5 months before. And it was as soon as Maple and I met, there was instantly something special there. She had never really bonded with another person before. And I'm really glad she picked me as her human, because I don't know what I would have done without her.
Can you share the secret?
I think it's just personality. I mean, I really don't know. I never remember a run or a day or anything where I did anything out of the ordinary with her. It was just one of those things where she kind of decided she just wanted to be around me all the time. And she's one of those dogs that would run to the end of the earth for me. And I trust her with my life.
Well, it's amazing that you've been able to have those experiences together and endure so much. I think of the 1,000-mile races that you've done with that dog in particular. It must be a bond that is unspeakable. I mean, you talk about your time at the Canadian Challenge with her in lead. How much was that different after maybe your first quest finish?
Oh, it was after that first quest. She was 3 years old in our first quest, and that race, I knew she was something special before that, but when we got to the finish of the quest, I mean, our bond was strengthened tenfold. And things that she's led the team through are truly incredible. Just big storms, things that really like anybody would think twice about. Maple, those are the times where Maple was at her best. She loves to kind of show off, go through challenges, and I don't know, get her team to safety.
So obviously you went on to the Yukon Quest in 16. Is there, perhaps a section of the trail or a portion of that race that stands out to you?
That race, kind of the whole thing, it was a magic carpet ride. Our weather wasn't too bad. It wasn't that cold for a quest. And it was, at that point, I had been going through checkpoint routines and reading about every section of the quest in Iditarod Trail for 10 years. And kind of just imagining it all in my head. And so to actually be running it and seeing sections of the trail that I had read about and actually doing the checkpoint routines, and everything was just real. So it was just an incredible experience, the whole thing. And I guess probably the biggest part of that race that stands out is the storm that hit coming into Dawson City. They had rerouted the race to go onto the top of the World Highway for that 50 miles into Dawson instead of staying on the Yukon River like it usually would. And we were camped about 50 miles out of Dawson, and right when we stopped, it was starting to snow. And coming from the UP, we get snow all the time. So it was kind of exciting. Like, I saw an attitude change in the dogs because they saw snow, kind of reminded them of home, I'm guessing, and they were happy. And obviously I fed off of that. So we ended up, when we left that camp, we ended up being kind of the first team out after that storm kind of cut the field of teams in half. That was the first run where I really saw Maple at her finest. And I think that's the biggest reason I remember it so well. Just, it's a lot of wind, a lot of snow, some really deep drifts. Just a very memorable night run. Yeah, it was pretty special.
How does the 2016 Quest compare against your run in 2018?
2018 was brutal. It was cold. We had, the warmest it got for the first 9 days was 35 below zero. And we had plenty of 40, 60 below zero temps. And weather-wise, it was just no comparison to 2016. It was hard. My team in 2018 is still the best team I've ever run. Our training was perfect that year. The team was 6 to 7 years old in their prime, and they're just super talented, super fun dogs, and we had worked with each other for years. So the bond between the dogs and myself, and the dogs between the other dogs, was very strong. And it was kind of, for most of the race, it felt like, I don't know what it felt like. It was like the dogs were just a unit. And it was so cool. I'll never forget every time I woke up from a camp in 2018, even if it was 60 below zero. I would get out of the sleeping bag, and one of my dogs, North, he would, as soon as he saw me get out of the bag, he would jump up and sit there waiting for me to grab the booties and get the team ready to go. And so he'd be the first to get his booties on, and he'd basically put them on himself. He was so excited to go. And that just made me so happy every single time I got out of that sleeping bag. And he's a cool dog.
It sounds like a big emotional and mental boost for you to see that the dogs are ready to go and you're not worried that you have shortened the rest too much. Can you talk a little about the training that year? You talk about it being perfect. I know lots of people see, social media posts of, out for a training run and a short video. What is perfect training like? What was your training schedule, or what can you tell us about your training that year that made it perfect?
So that year, our fall was, it was nice and cool. So our training, we got started in August and just had real steady runs all the way through the fall. And I had, as pretty much all I was doing that fall and winter was training my team. I had help grooming trail and keeping all that stuff open. And we had 60 miles of trail open that year. So once snow came, we were doing a 60-mile run. Usually 2 days on, 1 day off for every dog. And just really just pounded the miles. Our conditions were perfect. So I had very few injuries. And I was just really just able to focus totally on training and running dogs. And it really saw it pay off for sure. But we definitely didn't get the cold here that we got once we were up running the quest.
Yeah, but you certainly got the snow. I mean, the
Yes,
Upper Peninsula is well known for its constant snow conditions, and so not everybody gets to experience that level of snow. So does it come early and stick around where you are?
It usually does. We can usually plan on it on being on sleds the first part of December. And we can usually run sleds at least through the middle of April, if not later. So we usually have plenty to go around.
So what makes for a good training grounds for these longer races where you need that training in? And switch gears a little and talk about the Iditarod. Your first one was in 2017, your rookie year. I think finished 42nd out of 64, which is impressive by any standard to finish as a rookie, but to come that high up in the standings, I believe right behind the Barrington sisters. How was your first Iditarod?
That race, I have a few very strong memories, and then a whole lot of pretty vague memories too. That was the first time I saw extreme cold. We had 55 below. I think it was 2 nights. And Iditarod just has a lot of different challenges from the quest. I find it harder mentally for me because there's just a lot more. There tends to be more monotony on the trail, and just a totally different set of challenges. I remember that was the year the race started in Fairbanks, due to lack of snow in southern Alaska. So the halfway checkpoint was Huslia, and that was one of my favorite parts of that race, just because of the history in that village, and I was pretty excited to go there. And we pulled in, and I stopped the team and check in, and pull the hook and start to go to our parking spot. And I realized there's about 5 little kids hanging on my sled, and it was just really, really cool to see the excitement in the village too. That was a pretty big event for them, and it was just it was fun to see that, and just all that extra excitement.
Well, it's a well-known community in terms of mushing.
Yes.
Lots of top-notch mushers and dogs that have come from that area. And the community not getting the Iditarod on a regular basis certainly seems to step up every time it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems like a real treat to come into some of those. Some might call it a bucket list location. Were there any others during your first Iditarod that really stood out? Did you have any challenges along the Bering Coast? It's always considered to be a tough portion.
The coast, so I actually had to drop Maple in Shaktoolik. So I did not have very strong leaders for the whole coast. That year, though, we had pretty much no wind. It was pretty wild. I never remember wind even on the sea ice that year. So as far as that goes, it was a very easy run on the coast compared to normal. yeah, pretty pretty rare there.
Yeah, normally you hear about, I think it's Shaktoolik is considered one of the windiest spots along that whole trail. So
Yes,
you may have got lucky on that one.
I saw the normal wind in 2020, so.
Yes, well, and 2020 was a big snow year as well. Thomas Werner won that one by a lot. He just seemed to power through all that snow. Did how was the trail when you got there? Was there still lots of snow, and was your experience in the UP helpful during that year?
Our training that year was not excellent. We had a higher than normal snow year here. So keeping trails open was extra challenging. And so I definitely didn't go into that race with the same caliber team I went into the 2018 Quest. The trail, a lot of it, by the time we hit it, it was kind of like running through mashed potatoes in spots. It was a very warm race. And one run on the Yukon, it was between Ruby and Galena. It's probably one of the tougher runs as far as snow conditions that I've been out in, because it was warm, it was raining, and there's about probably 10 to 12 inches of fresh snow on the river. So you couldn't see where the base was. And it was just kind of slow going there for a while. So yeah, trail conditions were pretty challenging for a good portion of that race.
Yeah, you hear a lot about the river in particular being a challenge, whether that's the trail conditions or the wind blowing the trail in, or just the monotony of running down the trail over and over when you're that tired and close to the middle section of the race. How did you combat that in your two races with the Iditarod?
A lot of listening to my iPad or iPod. That's kind of when things get really monotonous and I kind of run out of things to think about. That's what I go to. If I can start singing, that's how I stay awake and with it. I also tend, when I hit 500 miles into a race, I tend to start thinking about the next year and get really excited about the team for the next year and what races we should run, and kind of get into planning mode. And it's kind of strange, but it just gets me really excited. And so that usually hits somewhere around the Yukon River.
So I'm going to jump into we got a couple social media questions which kind of fill in nicely here from Epsi. So the first one is, do you have a favorite race distance?
I'd say 1,000 miles. Just because there's nothing like it. It's when you finish a race that long, it's an experience like no other, and you're definitely cross that finish line a bit of a changed person and have a bond with your dog team that you can't get really doing anything else. It's pretty powerful. And yeah, so I think 1,000 miles are definitely my favorite, especially if it's the Yukon Quest Trail. It's a pretty incredible adventure.
Okay, and how often do you snack dogs while you're on the trail?
I usually snack every 1 to 2 hours, depending on temperature and length of the run. Yeah, 1 to 2 once we get into heavy training and then racing. That's kind of my normal.
Is there a preferred snack that your team enjoys?
They like good old frozen beef. We have hit times in Iditarod where they want fish really bad, and they'll they'll go for that salmon like crazy when they want it. But yeah, that's usually warmer weather. They'll start wanting fish.
I think it's a little more moisture content in
Yep,
fish, is it not?
it is.
So obviously you've had, several 1,000-mile races and certainly some shorter ones with Nature's Kennel and under the guidance of Ed Steelstra. But this summer you started something new on your own. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes. Yeah, this summer was very exciting. So I started My Dog. Basically, it is a summer sled dog center. So a place where people can come and I can share the sport. So we have puppies there and my race team. And really, it's puppy cuddling, meeting some of the race team, and then just education about all the different races out there, about the dogs, and it's just so much fun to share that because not enough people know about sled dogs and how incredible they are. So it's been a couple years that I've been working on getting things set up and ready to open My Dog. So it was a very exciting summer, and already planning for next year and getting excited.
Excellent. So did you have a successful year? Lots of people out to see you?
We did. Yeah. Definitely kind of more than I was expecting for the first year. That's always a great place to be. And met a lot of very, very fun people. And my team loved it too. They had fun.
Nice. And how can people find out more information or get in touch with you about My Dog if they're interested?
They can go to mydogtours.com. So it's midogtours.com.
Nice. So we'll make sure to include that in the show notes below so anybody listening can jump on and check out Laura's website on her fun new activity and a chance to come and see some puppies because everyone loves puppies and the rest of her sled dog team. Do you have any race plans for the upcoming season that you can share with us?
We do. We're going to head out to the Bear Grease Marathon at the end of January and then be at the UP 200. And if all goes well, we'll make it out to Maine for the Can-Am. So it'll be a fun year.
Nice. Sounds like a nice year and staying a little bit closer to home, which will be nice for a change.
Makes it logistically a lot easier.
Excellent. That's so much fun. Well, I really appreciate the time that you spent with us. I know that sled dogs and sled dog sports, people focus on the lead dogs and the mushers, but there's a lot that happens behind the scenes with extra help. Is there anybody that you'd like to thank that has been helpful in the last year or as you've come along in your mushing career?
Yeah, my parents this last year especially have been, I don't know what I would have done without them, honestly. They came up for every race last year and handled for me. And then this year, or this spring and summer, getting all the final projects done to open My Dog. Dad and I put up my cabin in about a month, and it's Mom planted I don't know how many thousand flowers, and they're just always there with encouragement, and they're pretty amazing.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you got a chance to have a lot of help to get you along towards your goals, and it sounds really exciting. Is there any other way that people can follow along with you? Are you on social media or anything?
I am. I'm on Facebook as Laura Neese, and then I also have a My Dog page also.
Great. So we'll make sure we include that below for anybody who wants to follow along. Really want to thank you for the time today, Laura. It's been a real pleasure talking to you, and it's always nice to hear people that have come to the Canadian Challenge and moved on to bigger races, and things are a little longer, a little different, but can't thank you enough for the stories. It's always nice to hear people enjoyed their time in Northern Saskatchewan and the Canadian Shield. So thank you so much for joining.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
Excellent. So there's another episode of Canadian Challenge Tales. Anybody looking to follow us along, you can reach us at CanadianChallenge.com. We also have our Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram listed below for anybody that wants to come along. We also have registration still open for anybody looking for 10-dog, 8-dog, or 6-dog race this coming February in Northern Saskatchewan. Again, a big thanks to Laura. And until next time, see you later.
From First Paw Media, this is Canadian Challenge Tales. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we invite you to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll find a link on the episode notes. You can tap or swipe on the episode cover art, and you'll see some offers from our sponsors. You can support our show by supporting them. If you like what you have heard, we would love it if you would give us a 5-star rating and tell your friends how to subscribe too. Your host is Dan Kirkup. Our executive producer is Robert Forto. Created for First Paw Media.